All right. So we are good and live and recording. Thank you for those that are able to join. I know these sort of typically come last minute, and we just throw a time and a day out that Suzanne and I can make it. And then again, for those that can jump on, we'll be able to chat and work through some questions. And for those that can't, you can review the recording. So certainly no obligation. And those that are here, if you've got to jump off for any reason, I know we're sort of in the middle of a weird time and a potential work day. So if you got to jump off, just say goodbye in the chat and feel free to do so. So the sort of time is ours, and this is a very sort of open platform to just chat. So I've got a few. I think we are mostly up to date on things, which I know has been a bit of a scramble here early to sort of get partnerships in shape, get topics outlined, work on our personas. There was a lot coming at us quick, but I think we're at a pretty good spot just as far as what needed to happen by basically the end of last week. Before we get rolling, and I can throw out some questions. Does anyone have hesitation or concerns as far as just like where we're at with those requirements at this point? Does everyone feel comfortable with sort of where we've landed after these first hectic couple weeks? And we're a small enough group too that feel free to just unmute and chime in at any point. Suzanne, anything else to throw in as far as kind of where we're at this point, and then I can run through the few notes I have.
I want to be kind of a geek, and I would love to just go around the room real quick.
Yeah, I feel like I know folks, but I think that's a good idea because it's always different when there's like voices and faces. So let's definitely do that. We can skip right past me, Carissa. I'll kind of just move down the line that I've got here. Carissa, do you want to go first and just do a quick intro? Maybe something else that you're thinking about that may not have come through in the introduction.
Yeah, so I'm Carissa Krug. I work at the University of Colorado Boulder. I'm a community center coordinator with Residence Life here on campus. I do work with students, specifically with front desks in residence halls, and then some administrative work related to occupancy, things like room moves or damages in rooms, things like that. So I currently oversee training and development for our student staff here who work in that role in the residence halls, and I really love that piece of my job, and so that's why I'm involved in this course, is because instructional design is pretty closely related to training and development work, and so that's something I'm interested in.
Awesome. How about Courtney? Here's the next one I'm seeing here.
Sure. So instructional designer at the University of Colorado Anschutz. Okay, thanks, Dana. Dana's behind me. So you instructional designer at the University of Colorado Anschutz. So I don't remember what the questions were.
Nothing in particular. Just saying hi and yeah, maybe even kind of what you're up to today, since I know we've got a little background on folks.
Yeah, so today I'm actually just, we had a keynote speaker, so I'm editing the video on that. But I guess my question is for the project, I kind of understand it, it was to figure out and then look at a topic and make an instructional design solution. But in terms of if we were very interested in doing something with technology, does that mean think about the technology or think about something else?
I'm going to put a pin in that, and I'm adding it to these notes. Let's roll through the intros, and then let's definitely address it though. And jump back in. I'm going to make a note to just sort of chat generally about what could potentially be included in these solutions, but pop back in when we get there if we missed anything. How about let's go, Dana. I guess it's just the four of you, so this is it, Dana, and then Susanna, you can jump in last.
All right. My name is Dana Torieri, right next to Courtney. So I'm also at University of Colorado Anschutz campus, one of the instructional designers here. And as some of the conversation has shown, I've really been just going off of things that I learned in undergrad and methods that I learned for the K through 12 world. And then really taking on the engineering process. So it's nice to kind of delve into the more specific, hammered out kind of details of a lot of the design models that are current. And yeah, just trying to stay on top of everything. We also moved offices. So we moved into our new house this weekend. We moved offices, and yeah, it'll be great.
Cool. Now it makes sense as you guys are gesturing. You're literally like next to each other. Quite literally. Got it. And that's got it. There we go. I was like, let's shift the video. Cool. Cozy office. Suzanne, what else? What do people not know about you? What are you up to?
I don't know that I told people that I work at Colorado School of Mines. So engineers, I think in your practical practice, Dana, you were saying that you use an engineer model where essentially all of the models we use, you're trying to figure out if they fit the solution you're trying to build. So I could resonate, I don't know if that's the right word, but I could definitely understand what you were saying. Everybody designs differently. So I think it's cool that you're honoring your engineer background. And so that's a little tidbit about me. And I'm going to keep up with Taylor as he travels all around the planet and all the students happy.
And this is not exactly typical, but the timing just happened to work out. And there's a big conference next week. I hope to bridge some of that into the course. So yeah, I'm getting an international flavor of sort of instructional design work, as well as just sort of international policy around those at a I guess broader sort of federal level, how they're looking at some of this stuff and how it can influence policy, which is actually pretty cool. It's a world I've just recently dove into, but it's cool to know that projects like these that seem seem sort of superficial, and though some of them are actually quite practical, that we've definitely got some this semester that really wanted to tackle something locally. But even the next step up from that, like if they take on a certain level of impact, then they, who knows how far it can go. And there's definitely groups that, work towards sort of bridging these sort of projects into broader, societal sort of policy changes that really affect a lot of people. So anyway, keep me honest. I know, like I said, this is not typical, but we're going to be a global course. We've got, folks joining from around the world anyway. So I figure, why not? We'll just all be on the road. I know we've got Guam represented. We've got a fair amount from Colorado, as typical, but we've got a pretty global crew here, which is cool. So we'll probably keep this fairly short, maybe 20, 30 minutes of just chatting through a few things, and then any other questions that come up, you guys can chime in. I guess right up front, to address Courtney's question, just sort of what can potentially be included, and like there's a lot of flexibility. And if you want to take a very sort of tech-heavy approach, and whether it's a specific tool or a sort of suite of really technical components that ultimately lead towards this solution that you're thinking through, that's perfectly fine. I think the key is to really outline exactly what the gap is, which I know we've been sort of hammering on, but outlining that gap, and we should be getting close to, I think, identifying that, and then really understanding who the learners are. That's sort of step two, and we can talk through some of the learner personas, which came back in a wide variety of flavors, and I want to make sure we all are aligned on sort of what the thought behind those were. Anyway, as we get through this next week or two, we're going to be really set on sort of where we're headed, and at that point, we can really get creative as far as what the ultimate. Again, these are all fairly hypothetical. We're just planning for the solution. We're not fully designing the end deliverable itself. So in that way, we can kind of get fun and creative around what the what the sort of technical components might be. So I don't know if that answers, jump in if that doesn't answer it, but yeah, you've got a lot of freedom as far as which direction you want to go with the, you know, individual components that you might build in. That could be, you know, specific sort of traditional ID tools like Articulate and doing some sort of simulations, or Captivate or H5P, some of those sorts of things that build in like online modules. Or you could go, you know, really beyond and say, actually, I want to think through designing a physical, you know, there's some really interesting projects around, you know, let's take like, you know, snail farming. I actually want to build a new contraption or component that is physically in the field, being used for those learners that are working. Anyway, point being, you've got a lot of freedom, but it really just depends on what your unique solution is. Susanna's smiling.
Yes, I want to add a question. So it looks like Courtney and Dana, you work together. You're going to do your project together, and it's on the Colorado Public Health Improvement Plan. So what's the technical component there?
So we were we were looking more at the need of having an extended network after our courses. So there's this gap. We have a lot of participants who tell us that they want to stay connected afterwards and they want to, you know, still have that community, but we're really struggling with making that work and making that happen effectively. So trying to come up with something to, one, help us brainstorm with something that we actually work with and could potentially put into practice. And two, we didn't want to do just like an extended course type thing. We wanted a different way to build this community other than something like Facebook, or trying to think outside of what we've been doing, at least.
So, and go ahead, Susanna, because this bridges well into, I think, some of my thoughts around the learner persona. So why don't you jump in first?
Well, yeah, I think it's perfect that you're trying to build, like, it makes the most sense to have this benefit the current work you're in. And so, yes, so community, unless you're in there somehow, is really hard, but we can keep like wrestling with that too, and perhaps Taylor will touch on that. But absolutely hugely valuable experience if you can make it happen.
Yeah, Susanna knows very well. Community building is one of the, it's the silver bullet. If you can get it right, it's amazing, and more often than not, you don't get it right.
Well,
this course is a good place to play with it.
Yes, and so if you're in there and it's you and Courtney in there keeping it alive, and you already have this dialogue and everything, then people can chime in. But as long as there's a foundation, it could definitely work.
So and so the few things, and I'll preface all of this to say, all of these project components can be revisited. So folks will notice that there were some lower scores that came back on the learner personas. And that's really just an indication of like, I think we want to ensure that everyone sort of sets this foundation of what the goal and intention behind those was and is. So first off, know that for any of these project components, as much as you want to invest and make this a really meaningful project, we're going to be open to it becoming that. If clearly we're not aligned, and sometimes it's just a matter of Susanna and I not being able to quite understand where you're at, or you may have some more context. So if you just sort of leave it at that, and we haven't bridged that missing context, then it is going to be what it is, and that's fine. We're okay with that. But if there's a point where you feel like, oh, I feel like we really have a good understanding of this, why did the score come back lower? That's just a matter of us chatting, working through it. If we need to do a call like this, and then revisiting that component and tweaking it, likely not like regaining full points, but we're happy to revisit any of these as we move. This whole project is meant to sort of simulate how these design projects unfold, which is they are iterative. The improvements happen throughout. You might, move back to the personas later once you've learned something and realize you need to add a component or redesign it visually, anything like that. So, so just know that that's always an option. And the piece that came to mind when you bring up sort of this difficult challenge of kind of knowing where you want to ultimately get this community idea, but exactly what the components are, or more of the sort of tangible things that make that ultimately happen. I'd say number one, keep the learner need in mind. And so not to say that whatever this community is that you're envisioning isn't the right move, but I'd say you also may just come to realize that you're sort of forcing a community into a, the community is this square peg and the solution ultimately is this round hole, and you're like trying to make it work, where the learners are ultimately, that's not what they need. They maybe just need like a simple email list or a combination of things that will ultimately get them where they need to be. So that's the biggest piece behind these learner personas, is to identify something that's really unique about your sort of learner group and attack that thing. So this comes back to, there was a lot of sort of general demographic sort of survey work in a lot of these personas, and not all of them. There were some that came back really strong. But the idea here is to take a hypothetical learner and create an individual, like connect with a human and build it from their perspective. So each of the phases of that empathy framework, discovery, immersion, connection, and detachment, write those as if you are that learner, and I think typically we'll come across something really interesting and unique about that single individual that then is representative of them as a group. And then you can start thinking about solutions that are really like uniquely tailored to that interesting, nuanced need. Too often we're kind of trying to be the big ultimate thing, and this came up a few times. There's a couple that are sort of working on building out social media based solutions, and those get really hard because it's like, oh, well, I'll just set up a Twitter, a Facebook, a Snapchat, like set all these up, let them go, and then ultimately, the learners will get what they need. And it's like, no, that's casting way too wide of a net. So all that to say, yeah, focus in, and again, we can revisit these learner personas. I think the comments that came back were typically tied to like, work at these from the learner perspective and try to identify something that's really unique about their reality. And some of these are hypothetical. So, a Ghana, for example, like we're not going to have a deep understanding without traveling there to know exactly what those learners ultimately are dealing with, but we can hypothetically sort of get to a place where we're like, oh, this could be a really unique reality given some of the research we've done. And then, the solution should directly target the fact that they are unique and whatever that context is unique. So the discovery piece of the learner personas is supposed to sort of drum up whatever that unique, interesting thing is about that user group. And then, think outside. This coming week, in fact, is going to be a lot of just thinking outside the box and getting playful and experimental with like what some of those solutions might be. I think finding that unique thing about our, again, individual learner, that is a learner persona, is a dive into a single individual. I mean, these should be extrapolations of a learner. You can make up a name, you can give them there was a few folks that actually pulled in images, anything like that can draw us in emotionally to who these people are, I think is really valuable. And then you work through each of those pieces, and hopefully through all of that, you come to something really interesting about them that then the solution can meet sort of head on. So any thoughts, or does that sort of make anyone sort of rethink? Again, and these personas, because there was a wide range, some really nailed it, and I think we're sort of dead on and really took that sort of user centered empathetic approach. Some definitely need to revisit those because we just sort of did a broad demographic survey, which can still be good. Like, and that we can include that in our analysis. No reason to throw that out. I think that's still useful. but there's a second step to really hit these learner personas, I think. I got to stop talking. Other thoughts that brings up, and we can, make these some of this very specific to projects. Dana and Courtney, if we want to keep going down the road with yours, we can. Or Carissa, if I think yours is one that I do recall we wanted to revisit. So if there's anything out of that you just heard, we can workshop yours a little bit too.
Yeah, I would guess I'm just curious. I think like reading back your comments, I think it would have been really helpful to have like seen one beforehand to like understand, because now that I'm hearing you say like it would be helpful if this person had a name or if there were photos, I think that that's really helpful for me. Do you have like an example of what a good fleshed out learner persona would look like? I know that you gave us like the question prompts of like the different things we should be thinking about in the different categories, but I'm just curious if there's like an example I can look at of one that's done really well.
I would say yes. First of all, we can certainly, we'll send one to you. Suzanne and I chatted a bit about this, and we wanted to avoid giving the prototypical, this ultimately happens where we like give the full example of a really good project, and then sure enough, 10 projects come back that are like carbon copies of that. So we wanted to have creative freedom, but we will send you an example of a learner persona that was uniquely strong from past semesters. I would also say just doing a search on learner personas, like sample learner persona, there'll be a ton of really good examples online of how some of those get built out. Again, they're not going to quite mirror having the empathy framework built in, but I think there's a fair amount there. But we will send you one that's directly from this course.
Okay, thank you.
And for others that hear this, or we can just shoot us an email. We're not going to do that broadly, probably for everybody, but if you do want to take a peek, just let us know and we'll send you one. And totally get it. Like often it's just if that's not part of something you've ever worked with, that helps to just get a sense for. But we'll take it with a grain of salt, and obviously what you're working towards is unique, so just use it as a model. Anything else around learner personas, topic selections, partnerships? We're about half and half. I think we have 4 or 5 that sort of went on their own, and another 2 or 3 that grouped up, which is fine. That's sort of just how it goes with the summer. I think people have kind of crazy schedules, so not a big deal.
Something before we leave the individual projects. Can you hear me? Courtney and Dana, as far as that persona thing goes, what is it the people you're building for, your stakeholders, I guess? What is it that they are lacking? Is it like a sense of face-to-face? Is it an online connection? That like digging a little deeper into that, as Taylor was saying, what would be the best solution? So like that's the perfect opportunity to get more clarity instead of we dive into make a community. So those are my thoughts, especially since we have time to share amongst each other right now.
Absolutely. And the most feedback that we've gotten from previous participants has been when they're in the course, a lot of times prior to the course, they're getting into maybe their first job, something that they didn't really study in undergrad or grad school, and they just kind of feel alone in this new job environment, and nobody else in their department does the same thing that they do. So in the course, they say it was really nice being able to bounce these ideas off of everybody and, get feedback into what I'm doing and making sure and kind of confirmation on that they're actually doing okay and that they can do this work well. And I think a lot of the feedback was we'd like to continue having that group and having that conversation and but it's not face-to-face in the course, it's the bi-directional video like this.
Okay.
So yeah, we'll definitely delve deeper into some of those for sure.
Yeah. Okay, Taylor, I'm done. I'm done now digging in.
This style of this comes up, I would say, once or twice each semester, not quite in the same light, but a very similar of like, what is the thing that ties, there's sort of a sustainability component missing, right? They have whatever experience, and they just, they being whatever that group of learners, whoever they are, there's just not a good like carrot at the end of whatever this thing is that makes them feel like they're still involved. So this comes up a lot, and it's tough. There's a lot of ways. I guess my one suggestion would be to think about an analogous situation where you were involved in something and felt like you just sort of got dropped off, and you wanted like that, and what in that moment would have felt like you kind of got that added level of support. Is it as serious, as critical as like looking at, a 12-step program and how they like, that's on one end of the spectrum, like really structured, like, and maybe building a technical online version of some sort of 12-step where they feel, again, that might be taking it too far, but that's like ultimate support. Like you've got really, and there's consequences if you don't stay committed. All the way back to just like little small rewards. Is there a way where you could just send like they just get a personalized letter once a month that says something, or that might be the other end of the spectrum. Anyway, there's a million ways to go about it between there, but I think it's really the key for you guys will be, what is the unique thing that sets this group apart from other groups? And whatever that thing is, how do we do something that speaks to them very specifically? And they're like, oh, they really care. And I'm just not another sort of typical, user that is part of this game. So we've got this whole week and really into the next week to really think through some of this. So it doesn't have to be something you guys land on right now. As we build out the storyboards, that'll probably be the next really good chance to like, then we're really visualizing like, what is the sequence of things these users might go through. And with that project, maybe you can sort of use that as your point to really land on exactly what this will look like. But as ideas come up, maybe throw a list of 4 or 5 ideas together, shoot them out to the group, or shoot them to Suzanne and I, and we can kind of think it through. But you don't have to land on anything just yet. I had a couple other things noted here. Just one, review the rubrics if you're not aware of sort of how to do that or where those individual components of the rubrics are. Let us know or do a quick search. But I think there was a few who probably just didn't realize that there's some pretty specific, in the learner personas in particular, we really wanted to see those 4 components that come out of the empathy framework. So just make sure those rubrics are reviewed so you know kind of what we're looking at. That's the baseline that Suzanne and I work from, so that we're all sort of trying to be equitable across all these projects. And then the other last thing I had was to know that you want to work towards a single cohesive visual style. So there's a couple strategies to do that, but just know that as we build out these components, ultimately we're going to want them all to become part of a single design document. So better to think now sort of what that visual style is. It might just be some headings, just structure via headings. But Christy and Alyssa in particular had a really awesome visual style to their learner personas. And hopefully they review this. It was clearly a lot of work and it fit in their whole theme. There was turtles, it was awesome, but I don't want that to become a ton of work knowing that then they've sort of set themselves in that lane for that visual style, which again was amazing. But just know that we want the full project to feel cohesive. So work towards aligning these components early, and that'll be less work in the end to kind of have it be cohesive as a full document. Does that make sense? or questions on that piece? Cool. Other thoughts? And Susanna, you can jump in. The two strategies typically are, and this certainly matters for groups more than individuals, but to have sort of sandbox versions of project components that aren't necessarily finalized, and then a visually cohesive secondary version that you're building in tandem. And then as things sort of either get graded and you feel like it's where you want it to be, then you just port it into the final. Or I think probably the easier way is to just iterate on the single document that you're also building a visual design into. And when I say visual design, I mean, it doesn't need to be like graphically, this is not a graphic design course, but just, structurally sound with good headings, proofread, all the things that would go into just a well-designed document. But that's up to you guys. There will be a fair amount of just peer reviewing and commenting within these documents, typically within Google Docs. So if you feel better about like having people leave comments and do a bunch of sort of messy work in one version, and then you can port that into what you will call your sort of final version. That's one way to go about it, or you can just kind of all let it evolve all at once in the same spot. But have a strategy as opposed to letting the strategy emerge at some point when you're scrambling. Suzanne, anything else? And then we'll take any last questions if you don't have anything else, and then I assume this will probably be pretty short.
Yeah, I also just wanted to ask Carissa, would you like us to kind of geek out on your project for a second since you're here? You have the option right now. If not, we can always do feedback on the back end, but it's nice to have a small group because then you can.
Yeah, so I was planning to message you all and just be like, I'll probably email you or something offline, just because I feel like this information is really helpful. I don't feel like I had like a good idea of what I should be working towards. And now hearing like Courtney and Dana talk about their project, I'm like, okay, well, I feel like I went in like totally the wrong direction. And so I'm just wondering if I should probably just select something like totally new that's maybe like more specific, because the topic I have right now is like pretty broad and I don't know. Yeah, there's not like any sort of clear direction to take it. And so I'm wondering if I should just kind of go back to step one and maybe send you all some ideas of like other things I could be doing and start again, maybe with my learner persona potentially.
Yeah. Taylor, well, Taylor, go ahead. Because
I mean, I think we would both say, certainly up to you. We are all about like the agency is on your guys' side. We want you to be able to move in whatever direction makes sense. But that being said, like that it'd be a fair amount of work because now we've got a few other pieces that are going to come quick. Our actual full drafts are going to be coming up here. I think those are due July 7th. So it's really just management of your time, and we're not opposed to it. But keep that in mind. We've just got things that'll start to stack up. And I can't recall exactly where you were at as far as schedule for the summer and stuff, but I mean, we're still happy to explore, partnerships too. If we have a pretty good list of where folks are at and all the topics selected. So, ultimately these are, and I don't know how else to say it, but these typically are, it is a better experience when building these out with a group. But again, we also understand people have contacted and just said, my life's crazy this summer. I don't want to put that on anybody else. So totally get that too.
Okay.
Is there a way, like there probably is, given how you're already in a learning and development area, there probably is something that you're pretty familiar with within your context that could actually beef up your resume too. So.
Yeah, I feel like that's what I'm trying to figure out is like, is there something that would be helpful, or like, some, I guess, angle or spin to take this in that would be something that I already know something about, but then also would, help me to grow in a new way. So I'm not exactly sure. I'm still mulling that over, but I think that yeah, I think that would be my hope. But I think when I'd initially heard like this project should challenge you, like it should be something you don't know very much about, then that made me think like I shouldn't pick something related to work at all. Like I need to pick something totally different. So I think that's why I like came up with the initial ideas that I did. And now I'm thinking like I should have gone the other direction probably.
It's equal like I think it's really valuable to go in a new direction because, and it depends on how much experience you have too, I would say. I mean, you know, those that have a little more experience in this world might say, well, I have a pretty good foundation. I want to, you know, really build something out that's practical and relevant to whatever you're working on. But I think there's actually a ton of value to go a new direction if you haven't had as much experience, because then you come at it with a completely fresh set of eyes. So depends on where you're approaching it. Every answer is always it depends, which is just sort of the reality of this work. But yeah, if it feels better at this stage and you can identify something pretty quick, you know, think through your day to day. And if there's a real obvious sticking point where you're like, hold on, actually, like, you know, at this point, there's always this missing piece of information, or, you know, there's always this weird behavior out of this certain group of people. And like, if they just shift that behavior a little bit, whatever would go so much better. Like, think through your day to day. And if there's that point and you really think there's a value in going down that road, then we can shift. It'll just be a lot of work. I think we'll actually, because I think a number of people are going to want to revisit the personas, we'll probably look at just pushing. I mean, we'll leave the due date as it is, but we'll push those and allow folks to submit an updated version of the persona with the initial draft. So keep that in mind. If it does feel like you want to go a new direction, then it'd probably be okay to just work. It'd be a lot, but you could kind of work through everything and build in the latest version of your persona into that initial draft of your design document. But just know we would probably just, you know, take that as the sort of final version of the persona at that point. Probably wouldn't. We'll want to do as little revisiting, like many weeks past. I mean, some of this stuff we can come back to, but it also just gets to be a lot to keep track of if you're constantly rebuilding different components. So it's up to you on how much you think you can handle, but we're open to you shifting gears if you feel like it's right.
Okay, I'll send you all a message after this. Thanks.
Okay. In fact, do that and we'll reply with a persona. Sorry.
Awesome.
No. Dana's laughing, so I just look back at her. I know Dana was going to say something, but for Carissa, me and Dana had a similar conversation of if we should do a topic area or that we're unfamiliar with, or kind of stick to our job in particular. And we kind of did both. So we did something that we can like actually do at work so that it wasn't too much, but we also decided like, okay, maybe our learner would be somebody in the rural community because we don't really know anything about that. Or maybe our solution will be something that we're unfamiliar with. And so that's why we're kind of leaning towards like tech and all that stuff, just so we can push ourselves, but not too much since it is the summer and it's fast. So that's something to also think about, like kind of staying a little bit in your comfort zone for your work. So it feels like you're doing something for your work, but maybe pushing yourself to something that you don't know versus just a completely new topic area.
Yeah, I really like that. In fact, it's the perfect blend of like, if you really sort of shoot for the stars a little bit and it's like, this could be practical. I think it could also fail miserably, but like this course can be a really good opportunity to push something. And you know, by the end, if it turns out that it seems like it might be really valuable, then you've got a really good starting place. And it's like, well, let's go implement this actually. Or if you realize it didn't quite take the shape you thought it might, then you know, not a big deal. This course should definitely be a sandbox of sorts where you can do that. I think that's a really, really good point and good way to go about it.
I would agree.
In fact, to me, that is what the majority of this program and grad school really can be, is like building skill, building your, whatever your resume looks like. That doesn't have to be like the traditional written resume, but like just building your sort of profile as a professional. And then also like improving your actual work experience as you go, trying to find the right blend of doing all those things all at once. Most folks in this program are pretty open to allowing those things to happen, while you're getting the degree. So it's cool. It's cool that folks are taking that approach. That's certainly not something we prompt, but that's cool.
Yes. Did we cover all of our points for today's meeting too? I think, Taylor, I think we covered everything that you had listed. Any ideas for the next time we have a meeting? Should we have a poll or something like that? I think we're going to have one more synchronous meeting at some point. Yeah, and we'll, if there's anything you guys want included, you don't have to say it now, but certainly shoot us a message. Suzanne and I are both very open to being sort of responsive and tailoring these to make it work for you. So yeah, some polls might make sense to gain some feedback of everybody broadly. We could do that. We've also just actually gone through and workshopped some of the drafts before. So if somebody wants to send us that ahead of time, and just say, it'd be cool if we, and you're open to it, bringing it up and working through some of the components sort of just in a live workshop style in Zoom, we can do that. It's kind of got to be vulnerable, but at the same time, you get some really good feedback from everybody. So catch-22 for those that want to go down that road. But yeah, just let us know. We're happy to make these useful to you guys. Any other questions or thoughts on stuff coming up? We've got, it slows down a little bit. Have a lot of fun with this next discussion. It's definitely the exploration discussions are meant to be that, like, think as big as you can. And then another quiz, really thinking about our initial visualization of what the journey of our learners might look like, and then looking at some objectives. It sounds like a fair amount of folks here already have some experience writing objectives, but that'll really lay the foundation for where we're headed, is nailing the overarching goal and then 3 to 5 objectives that we want to accomplish. Once we sort of solidify those objectives, then Suzanne and I are going to be a little pickier about ensuring that what you're building out is aligned to what those objectives are sort of saying you're ultimately going to do. So that's sort of next steps here as we get into week 3 and 4. Keep the Sundays in mind sort of as the major points of stuff being due. As we get into the initial draft of the design document, those shift a little bit. We'll want to get some peer feedback in. There's just a chance to kind of help each other out and give some thoughts and do some editing and that sort of thing before we submit. The first draft will be due on July 7th. Because there's a holiday mixed in there with the 4th, we will just sort of see where things are at. And if it feels like there's going to be a lot of folks out of town and just it's going to be tough around the holiday, then we can look at maybe shifting everything a week or something. We're pretty flexible, but let's just see how that works out. Does anybody on this call, do you guys know you are like, I'm going to be checked out for a long weekend over the 4th?
I'm going out of town tomorrow until like the 4th. So, but okay. I'll have internet connection, so I'm going to be having to do work anyway.
And Carissa's the one that wants to redo her project altogether, and she's leaving town. No, that's fine. It's the away and disconnected. Of course, we don't want you doing a whole lot of work too. If you have a holiday plan, like, make sure you disconnect. That can still happen. It's a busy summer, but we can make sure there's time for that. Cool. Well, yeah. Anybody else watching this, just let us know if the 4th really seems like it's going to be tough. With that first draft being due around there, we can shift things. Cool. Any other questions? And then we'll probably sign off if not. Going once, twice. Suzanne, anything else from you? Cool.
Nope,
right.
Nothing for me.
Thanks everybody for your time and enduring. It's still like, I swear it's like 90% humidity, so I'm starting to sweat a little bit. And I'm like, I got to get off camera. It's really warm.
We're about to drive to Kentucky, and it's going to be 90 this weekend. We're with the humidity, it's not going to be great. We'll be feeling that too.
That's even worse. That part of this, yeah. The South in June, July is rough. Enjoy it.
Yes, good luck.
Find some AC.
Absolutely.
All right. Thanks for the time, everybody. Appreciate it. We'll talk online.
Okay.
All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.